really big start of the process, and it seems a little overwhelming to me. What can we just go through? What are the components of the application bit by bit?
Absolutely. As you'll see on your screens, you can see just a full list if you're just looking for kind of like your bulleted important points. Um, but for our students, we ask for, some of the most important items are going to be like your prerequisites, and those are things that you can send to your advisor and or your counselor, excuse me, and have them go through all of your prereqs to see kind of what's going on. And then another sort of time sensitive one is going to be your transcripts because you're, getting those from another school. Sometimes those can take a little bit longer. But we also have something of note, a supplemental materials area. And this is a place where you'll have some of your transfer materials if you're a transfer student, so you can see any military history. And these I think sometimes can be a little bit confusing. These do not apply to every single student, but if you do have these sort of like little extra bits, that's what those supplemental materials are. And then of course, if you are in one of our clinical programs, the Chinese medicine or the ND program, you'll also have an interview which a counselor and a faculty member will perform after your application has been, seen and submitted.
So, follow-up question, going back to what you said about prerequisites, is it necessary to have all of the prerequisites done before applying?
It is not. We have this glorious thing called a conditional admit. And this is for students who might be just finishing up some classes or maybe don't quite have their bachelor's or their master's, whatever they're working on. And we often, what we'll do is we'll just communicate with you and say, hey, like you have these things, but we still want you in the program. Those items are always required before you start in our programs. And then for our ND program, which tends to be quite rigorous for our prereqs, you'll need to have most of them. But we can always work with you and see where you're at and discuss timelines. But we love our little conditional admit because it allows you the time uh, to get the things that you're missing.
Awesome. And I guess add one more follow-up question as we're talking about these materials. So I'm seeing on the supplemental materials, which you said makes sense that like these only apply in certain cases, but what's going on with the criminal statement? Like what's the background there?
Mhm. So the criminal statement is it's an internal document. We wouldn't be sharing it with anyone. It's something that you write for the counselors to review. And it all has to do with licensing. And when you come into our program, we want to be 100% sure that you are going to be able to be licensed when you get out of the program. And so that's all that criminal history is. We review it internally to ensure that you can get your license. And that's super important, right, for medical school. So that's why we ask for that. But I do want to enforce and remind that that does not get released to anybody else. That's a completely internal document. So you don't have to worry about any other eyes seeing any sensitive information.
Got it. Got it. So I guess maybe we can just kind of go piece by piece through those different components. So I guess starting with the resume, how how would you recommend I, as an applicant, update my resume for my application to NUNM?
Yeah, so what we recommend is that you want to tailor your resume towards NUNM, pretend that's like the company that you're applying to, and your program is the job that you're applying to. So kind of tailor your resume to that program, specific program, research your program. Um, I really suggest taking a screenshot of this slide to see our guidelines and how we review the resume, and really recommend the bulleted format to show the skills you've gained through each experience on your resume and how it relates to your programs that you're applying to.
Got it. So, you know, I might be, say I'm an applicant and, I started my undergrad at a community college right after high school. And, after 2 years of community college, I'm coming in and applying to finish my bachelor's at NUNM. And I don't have a ton of work experience. Like I've worked at an ice cream parlor, like, which doesn't feel like it relates to like a medical career or like a health career. Uh, what would you do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, well, that sounds like a delicious and fun place to work. And I think that one of the things we're looking for is how do our applicants work with people? So, working at an ice cream parlor, I'm sure you had to work with people, kind of show how you earned and gained some leadership. How did you, customer services is an amazing skill that doctors, nutritionists, acupuncturists use in their practice, um, as well as that critical thinking that goes behind all those interactions. So, if I definitely think you can tailor that on your resume, and to show the skills that you've gained for your program you're applying to. So
Got
got
it.
it.
Got it. So I've also, one of the things I really love about NUNM is just how we have students from all walks of life, coming into the programs, and we also have, applicants who have been out of undergrad for 10 years or longer, and they're coming to natural medicine or they're coming to acupuncture as a second or third career. So if I was one of these kind of career changer applicants, do you have any advice for me in terms of how I present my resume?
Yes, similarly, just add those relevant things. You, career changer, probably wouldn't put their first job at an ice cream parlor on the resume. But again, just tailor those experiences, the volunteer experiences you've had, the work experience, even non-health related work experience. You can show those skills that we're looking for and how you've gained them. That's kind of the format area that we include on this slide, just as a reminder to show those skills that you've gained. That's another reason why we include the volunteer and honors portion of the resume, because people can get experience with the medical field through volunteering for an organization or group that they care about and believe in to get that information or to get those skills and experience with the medical field as well. Did I answer your question?
I think so. I think that's actually really great to hear about sort of volunteering as a way to, if I haven't had any kind of direct medical experience, there's a way that's an opportunity and an avenue to sort of build a little bit of a foundation through getting connected with an organization that I might feel connected to or believe in. Are there any things, are there sort of like any resume no-nos, like things that you would say, don't do this on your resume?
Um, Gosh, maybe I can't I guess just relevance. So keep it relevant. I would strongly suggest following the format guidelines that we have on this slide. Make it easy to read, make it easy to skim, kind of balance the formatting. You don't need like fancy script or a picture, but just kind of straightforward and include that information and include everything um that is asked in the prompt and the descriptor. So yeah, tell us about your education, tell us about work experience, either health related or non-health related. show those skills that align to the demands of your future program, and then the volunteer experience. I would highly suggest those things. I guess those are all things I would do. Maybe Caleb has some no-nos, but that's what I like to see. And I
I don't
think
know.
will help you be successful.
That sounded great. I think that that definitely answers the question. And I guess another thing that sort of just occurs to me is, I feel like I've had conversations with prospective applicants who feel like, they've been out of the workforce for a long time. Maybe, they've been a stay-at-home parent for the last many years. So if you're in a situation like that and you're really kind of struggling with sort of like telling your story through a resume, what do we have any tips, any guidance for folks who might be in that situation?
Yeah, I guess one thing is just to know you're not alone. I think many applicants come to NUNM that way, and yeah, just think about the people that do know you and how you can share that information.
Awesome. So I guess it's a good time maybe we can move on to another component of every single application, regardless of the program, is going to be at least one essay, or sometimes it's called a personal statement. So um, I guess to start at the beginning, kind of to take a step back, why do we require essays or personal statements in the application?
So the essays serve a couple of purposes, right? So the essays sort of do give us a little bit of like a baseline. What does your writing look like? Do we feel like it's well-rounded? Is it well written? Just it kind of just gives us an idea of like what you look like in a sort of like a technical way. But they also serve this other purpose of allowing us to get to know you. So, you know, like finding out why you came to this particular school, or what led you here, where your interests started, things like that. And it really is kind of sort of like Joel said, a little bit of a personal essay, even if it's also a little bit technical, because we do want to know that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. And the essay is a really good place for you to just sort of start that journey and get that sort of on the table as we progress through the process.
Another kind of just sort of like, I feel like basic question when it comes to the essays. Uh, is it appropriate for me to use AI to draft my essay?
Absolutely not. And despite what everyone says, we can tell when you have not written your essay. We can tell when you have used software that is not human. Um, you know, AI is one of those tools, right, that like a lot of people are getting used to using. And, you know, to organize your thoughts before you write, great way to use that tool. To sort of like get your ideas in there and kind of like get them as a bulleted list, also a great way to use that tool. But in terms of the, excuse me, the actual writing, we see you, we can tell. So just just stray away from AI.
Got it. Got it. Well, I guess continuing on, you have to start your essay somewhere. So how how do you recommend starting an essay?
Mhm. So I love a sample. I love a or sample, excuse me. I'm staring at the sample introduction here. I love a good like hook sentence. I always love to start my essays with a question. Sometimes that can be a little bit drab. But in your introduction, I mean, there are, as you can see on screen here, there are some technical things we want to see in your introduction. But, make your introduction interesting, make it personal to you, so that as we're reading it, we're like, oh, this person, like they really have some things that we want to know more about you. That's always my suggestion for an intro paragraph. Make it really interesting. Remember that it is a prompt and you should be writing to our prompts, but also it's a chic little personal moment for you to kind of let us know what you're going to talk about, how you're going to show us that you're good for our program or that we're good for you.
Thanks, Caleb. So continuing on, what are your sort of tips and suggestions as, I'm writing my essay and I'm getting into the meat of it. I'm getting into the main, like, central body section of my essay.
Mhm. So this is usually where, and like I said, I could read this whole list to you, but y'all can screenshot it if you need a chic list. But for your body, this is where I tend to like to get into the sort of the nitty gritty. You can always, of course, make it your own. If you're sort of like me and you want to do like some jokes here and there, that's fine. But the body is really for telling us what your experience is, how your education and training relates to this program, and then any skills or personal qualities that you feel are good for this program. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a technical skill. It could be interpersonal skills, it could be bedside manner, it could be the fact that you wrangled 20 10-year-olds in a classroom, a year ago for whatever reason. This is a really good place to kind of explain that to us and say, even if I don't have a shadowing experience, here's experience that really matches up with what we're looking for. So the body's going to be the meat of it. It's going to be where you're going to put all that really important information for us to know about you in a sort of a technical way.
Got it. And then, you have to finish strong. And I don't know, when I write, sometimes I don't really, I struggle with, like, how do I wrap this up nicely? So I feel like you're on a roll, Caleb. So what are your suggestions? What are your tips in terms of coming up with, like, a nice, strong conclusion for an essay?
So once again, it's sort of summarizing the whole thing. So you sort of summarize in the beginning, you get us excited to read, you tell us all the things that are like really important about your actual education. And then at the end, you want to kind of restate all of that in a sort of shortened way. This is also a good place for you to express, excitement or your commitment to the school or the program. And I always like to ensure that my closing paragraph, sort of like the opening paragraph, is memorable in some way. I'm a little bit, I guess, maybe old school that way. So, you want to make sure in your conclusion that not only are you kind of summarizing what you sort of already talked about, you also want to make sure that you're kind of closing it in, a strong way, whether that's by expressing your abilities or like with the sample, I think I wrote like a little joke at the end. Just sort of wrap it up, but don't make it boring. I think a lot of people see the conclusion as like, oh, I'm done. I don't have to worry about this anymore. But we read every word, we read every single essay. So we will see you. So make sure that you're kind of wrapping it up. And I always tell people to give it a little bit of personality. We read a lot of these essays, and we want to be, we want to remember you.
Thank you, Caleb. So I think we can probably continue on to other components of the application, other required items, or I guess in the case of recommendations, optional, but definitely recommended. Um, so what is tell me a little bit about the recommendation. Why do we ask for this? Is it optional? If it's optional, do I still need to do it? I'm a little confused, so enlighten me.
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best. So, yes, we do still highly recommend the reference. I guess the optional part is just like we don't want to hold applications up if we're waiting on an outside person than the applicant. So, a reference can tell us a lot about you and give maybe some more insight to an experience or your academic record, and can really benefit your application. So yes, at least when you're completing the initial portion of the application with the personal information, I would select someone that knows you well, either from an academic or a professional setting, somebody that knows how you deal with feedback is really helpful, maybe to think of someone that knows how you work, how you communicate, and have faced any challenge. You'll put their name and email address into that initial portion, and your reference will get a recommendation form emailed to them. So I would recommend checking with them that it didn't go into a junk folder, because it sometimes does. It shouldn't take more than 15-20 minutes for your reference to complete. It is a ranking multiple choice, and then there's 2 short answer questions. They do have an option to upload a letter if they've already written you a letter, um, instead of those short answer questions.
Got it. So that's really helpful to know that though, like the little bit of that process that uh, if I'm asking someone to provide a recommendation for me, that doesn't actually mean that they need to sit down and like draft a full page letter. I guess they could, but NUNM will send them a form that they can just that gives them the specific questions they need to respond to. So it's actually very streamlined for them. That's cool to know. Um, so what I guess I wanted to sort of ask a little bit just about the kind of person I should be asking to provide my recommendation just a little bit more. What I feel like I've spoken to applicants who are, you know, not sure they have a good professional recommendation. Maybe they've been out of the workforce for a while, um, like a stay-at-home parent, or I've also spoken to applicants who have been out of school for a while, and so they don't actually feel like they are in touch with any of their professors, and they don't think any of their professors would remember them. So, uh, if I'm sort of struggling with finding a professional or an academic contact to act as my reference, what's your advice?
Yeah, that's why we recommend volunteering. Your volunteer coordinator at your organization would be a perfect person for this. Have you volunteered at your child's school? How about your child's teacher? How about the PTA president? Are you the PTA president? Have your vice president write this reference for you. Um, a client of yours, how about a client if you have some sort of business you have, yeah, just please don't select someone who's a peer or family. um so yeah,
Got it.
I hope that list is helpful. If not, oh, a mentor, maybe some sort of mentor coach.
Got it. I think we can probably continue and sort of, we talked a little bit about these supplemental materials at the very beginning, but I guess just to revisit, so like, what is that process with the supplemental materials?
Yeah, so in that initial portion of the application, the personal information section, applicants will just indicate if any of these experiences apply to them. And then once they submit the first part of the application, the supplemental materials will be added to the application materials list, along with the resume, essay, etc., the applicants will need to upload. So if you selected one of these supplemental materials, they'll show up on that list and will become part of your application that you'll need to complete in order for the review to begin. What we ask for is just a clear description of the experience or the situation in detail, as well as the outcome and the outcomes of the situation. Um, so kind of like that, who, what, where, when, why. I was in this branch of the military. I served from these dates. here's some of my training. This is where I got to be based at, deployed to, and then reason for discharge, that kind of thing.
Got it. Got it. And I guess it, you know, maybe it seems obvious, but I guess it's always probably worth reiterating that, like, if I'm an applicant and I'm going through the process and I'm confused about anything, like, it's always okay for me to reach out and just ask a question. Um,
Please do. Yeah, we don't want this to be the difficult part. We want to start our welcoming you to our community and showing you that we're here for your success. So yeah, please just ask. Can you help me walk through this, etc. I do just want to reiterate that any of these supplemental materials are just used for internal purposes on your application.
awesome. So, uh, the interview is it's not part of every single application, but it is an important part of the application if you're doing the Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, or if you're doing any of the acupuncture and Chinese medicine degrees, any kind of any degree program where you're training to interact with patients face to face. So, why do we do the interview exactly?
Yeah, well, again, we just, for these clinical programs, we do just want to get to know you and ensure a good fit for our program and see how you interact, see your body language, talk with you in person, over a video. So we're not gonna, yeah, that's, that's the reason why we do the interview. The interview team or panel is admissions counselor and then faculty from the program that you're applying to.
Got it. Um, could you talk a little bit more about like the format, like how long is the interview, like what kind of questions would I be asked if I'm actually in the interview?
Oh yeah, so we schedule the interviews for an hour. Again, it's with a faculty member and then an admissions representative. And we have about 10 questions that we ask. Um, and then we do leave time at the end for your questions. So please bring the questions that you have found in your research about your program for us, or a question for the faculty member specifically, as that those names will be sent to you with your application invitation. So faculty love to answer questions about their class or their research, and it will reflect really highly on your preparation.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess, um, you know, continuing on with that thought about, preparing for the interview, great idea to sort of do a little research on the faculty member that's going to be interviewing you. Any other sort of tips, any other suggestions on how to
Yeah,
prepare?
so sure thing. There's a couple ways to prepare. A big part of it you've already done in writing your essays and resume. So we are not going to be asking questions on your biological sciences, no formulas or scenarios or equations there, but we just want to get to know you a little bit more. So I would review your written materials because clarifying questions may be asked about situations or your experiences or what was it like working in that pharmacy, etc. Um, and hint hint, the questions that we asked do align with those essay prompts and written materials. So if you've reviewed that and yeah, just be ready to tell us about yourself.
Got it. Cool. Um, I love hearing the two of you talk about the process. I feel like everyone should apply to NUNM, if only to have the wonderful experience of working with one of you one on one. We're getting close to the end of sort of the planned kind of presentation form section of today's webinar. We want to, save lots of time for Q&A. So feel free to go ahead and drop some questions in the chat if you want to do that in a couple minutes. If you would rather unmute and ask your question directly, that will be fine too. But before we transition right into that Q&A, putting on my sort of admin coordinator hat, I thought that I could just sort of share a little bit of just a synopsis review of sort of the process, the step-by-step what happens. So when you're submitting your application, when you open your application online, the first section is going to is asking for basically your personal information, your name, your birthday, where you're from. It asks for your education history, so the list of previous schools that you've attended. And in that initial kind of information gathering phase of the application, that's also the place where you will provide the name and email address for a reference if you're including a reference. If you're not including a reference, you can just put your own name and email there. And then, or if you don't have your reference ready, you can just sort of put your own name and email. And then after the fact, you can let us know who that person is and we can make updates. So once you put in all that information, you hit submit. After that happens, you need to then do a couple things. You need to contact your past schools and request that official transcripts be sent to NUNM. Usually this is done online. If you just Google your school and, request official transcript, it will probably take you to the page that gives you the specific instructions. The other thing you need to do is upload all of those additional requirements. So your essay or essays, your resume, those supplemental materials if they are relevant. Once everything is received, we start the review process. So the committee looks through all the materials and does their first evaluation. If you're in a clinical program, this is also at the point where we would invite you to come in for an interview. After that whole review process takes place, then we move to the decision phase. Uh, there's a letter that's posted to your online self-service account that says if you're admitted, so that's visible to you once it is published. If you're admitted to the program, you will also receive a phone call from your admissions counselor. And then I wanted to also briefly mention, this is not technically part of the application process per se, but I think it's really important for all of our applicants to just be aware of these things. If you are accepted into your program, and if you accept that offer of admission, before you start, we need to work with you on a handful of enrollment requirement documents. So all of our students, incoming students, need to complete a criminal background check. Um, we ask for immunization records and a TB testing record, as well as if you're going into the clinical programs, there's also a 10-panel drug test. And a lot of these, the immunization records, the TB testing, the drug testing, these are all tied to state and federal level legal requirements for schools, for medical schools that operate a primary care facility. So we have a primary care clinic as part of our NUNM campus. So the state of Oregon and tied to other federal regulations, we need to have our students and our student practitioners, show that they have certain immunizations. Have tested negative for certain substances. So just be aware that that is something that is part of the tail end of the process. Obviously, if you have questions about those, let us know. We're happy to give you more information. We're happy to support you in that process of gathering those documents and uploading them as necessary. So just be aware that that's something on the horizon. I think with that, feel free to please take a screen grab of this. If you want to reach out to Rebecca or Caleb directly, they'd love to hear from you. They're both expert in all of our programs. Rebecca works with a lot of our ND applicants. Caleb works with a lot of our Chinese medicine applicants and applicants to our graduate programs in nutrition, clinical research, and global health, but they'd love to hear from you.